Hi there. Today I thought of making a video about the essential things or the most important things that I like people to know when they embark on the path of yoga, when people decide to practice, when people come to class. I can't always in every single class say everything that I like to say, especially when people are new in the class. I don't want to bombard them with too much information. So there are things that are not mentioned that I actually think are quite essential to the way we practice or to the understanding of what yoga is all about. So I thought perhaps I make this video and I can always mention to people, if they want to, they can have a look and know a little bit more about it. One of the most important thing that yoga is all about is about the merging of opposites. And hatha yoga itself, is the sun and moon yoga, is the mergers of the two opposites. And there's a few opposites that in our practices we are attempting or intending to bring together. One of these sets of opposites is effortless effort. So we want to be, when we are practicing the postures, we want to be in a position of effort. So there is a tendency, there is a wanting to kind of maybe push our bodies towards a place that it's never been. But at the same time, doing that is effortless. So we're not pushing too much against where we find the resistance, or we're not pushing too much against pressure. So we want to kind of find the balance between the two. It does seem paradoxical, but it's not. It's really a very complete way of approaching a posture, in my opinion. So some people sometimes go into a posture and all you see is effort. From a teacher's point of view, all I see is that wanting to, strike that balancing posture, or going to, a core strengthening and staying there. And you see people almost turning blue, attempting that. And I think it is necessary to kind of push against boundaries, but not to that extent. So I am repeating myself. So it's about really going into there, pushing against the boundaries, but being able to breathe, being able to being composed within it. If you're doing a posture to that extent with so much power and will, and then on the other hand, you're not composed, you have lost what the goal of yoga is all about. So effortless effort, effortless and effortlessness are the two sides of the opposites that we want to maintain during our practices. The other two sets would be tension and expansion. And again, it's very similar to the first set. You go into a practice, the muscles contract. They're very strong. You might find that your breath, you can't breathe. And it's finding again the other side of that as you're working hard on the posture, as you feel the strengthening of the body and the contraction of it, is to find some form of expansion within the body and connecting to that as well as the contraction. One of the things that I think yoga is amazing in how it affects our being is that it really shows us that none of the opposites is better or worse. It shows us that we don't need to suppress one of the opposites for the other. They have no precedence over another, and really life itself is made of opposites, and without one set, the other is irrelevant, and life doesn't exist. The universe doesn't exist as we know it without this. So in our practice, tension and expansion is one. And again, I know there was a time where I used to have a problem with tension. I still, if I'm not conscious and aware, I would have problem with tension, as if it's not supposed to be there, as if everything is supposed to be really, really easy. My practice has to be easy. No, the truth is that yoga, and that part of it, when I talk about the practice of, I'm talking about the practice of posture. And yoga is not just about that, but with the postures, tension and difficulty, it is part of it. But we can, and it is possible to find an ease within the tension, an ease within the uneasiness that goes with life, as well as a specific posture that we go into. In some, I've once read somewhere, or I was experiencing it myself, that the ego, which in the spiritual world a lot of the time is known as something to be to control or to let go of, which is not necessarily my opinion, but the ego itself is contraction. Is this wanting, is this desires, is this hardening of the being, is the part of us that knows and goes towards something and kind of contracts. Awareness, on the other hand, is expansion, is this indefinite opening and allowing, the ability to allow. The ego doesn't. The ego kind of wants to direct, whereas the awareness is totally open to all directions. And these two are complementary. It isn't that, we mustn't contract, we mustn't have an ego, we mustn't want to direct. And it isn't that we are so, it isn't that we must always stay in that expanded state of allowing everything to be. It does make it easier when we have a little bit of that allowing while we are directing the course of our life, or while we are directing the course of our practice. So both contraction and expansion are the necessity of our life, whether while we're performing postures or when we are living our normal day-to-day life. Finding that tipping point between the two is I think, the art of performing a posture or life. The other two opposites that often come into mind, and I can't always mention it in class, is stability and strength as one part, as one side, and the other side is the sweetness and pleasure. In other words, a posture can be both strong and sweet. Now, when you look at somebody who's very strong, there's not much sweetness in their face. There's something could be thought of as a bit unfriendly. I'm strong. It's like Hercules. But you want to have a strength that is also gentle and sweet when you strike a pose. If it's just too sweet and it's wobbly, well, it can be very sweet and very wobbly. There's no stability to it then. So striking the balance between strong and sweet, between stable and pleasure, so it's pleasurable and it's stable at the same time. So you don't want to, in some way, lose the sweetness of it for the strength, and you don't want to lose the strength for the sweetness and the pleasure. And again, that's why I think it's so powerful to move in such a way that we maintain the balance between the two, because we learn that this is exactly the same art in life. If I want to be very strong in my relationships, I'm very stable, but I don't give in at all. There's no sweetness. There's no sense of vulnerability or kind of pleasure in all of it. Then there's no point. You want to have that softness in the strength, gentleness in the strength. If I'm all strong, but there's no gentle about me, there's no pleasure in it at all for me or for other people. So strength and gentle come together. Stability and sweetness come together. So that's the one part that I think, I might come up, I might think of other opposites that yoga allows us to merge in life and in our postures, which I will mention maybe in other videos, but these are the ones that I want to talk about today. And the other thing that often comes to mind is that yoga isn't really an exercise program. Often people come to class because they want to exercise their body, they want to do good for their bodies, which is brilliant because it's fantastic and it's a wonderful, wonderful way of doing it. But I don't think yoga should be boxed into that notion that it is an exercise. Because if you think it's an exercise, you go into class and you will realize that there is a lot more to it. And the other thing is also that an exercise is already defined for us. An exercise program that is good is one that gets our heart going, pumps the heart and therefore the circulation, strengthen the muscles, it makes us supple and strong. So we have, and it burns a lot of calories. Now, often these are the definition that follow or how our mind thinks of an exercise. So people can come into a class and get disappointed because they don't feel their heart pumps and they're not sweating. There are some yoga classes where you sweat and there are times where you do. But if that's the only way of you looking at yoga, you might get disappointed. Yoga is wonderful for the body. There's much more. I mean, it does definitely cover the muscles and the heart and the blood and everything. But it's also very much about the brain, about the nervous system, and about the chemicals that are running through our blood into the system. I remember one friend of mine who studied biology was once saying that the way that we walk can create a totally different set of chemicals in our body. For example, he was saying that when you're walking to work, what you're firing in terms of chemicals and hormones in the blood are very, very different than the hormones and chemicals that you create when you're walking leisurely. And that's why with practicing postures in yoga, our approach is incredibly important. And we mustn't look at it just as an exercise in order to, strengthen the muscles. We can look at it as a way to balance all of our systems so that everything work in harmony with each other. I think that's really how I'd like to introduce it. And our bodies, our being, and creating balance within it is such a huge subject, because we can't make it as small as an exercise. An exercise has one thing, and there's only a few things that it ticks, whereas the balancing our system, our internal system, is so much wider. That's why, our being, if we are to create harmony in our being, is not just about the body. It's not just about the physical part. It's also about the emotional part. It's also about the mental part. Our knowledge and what we know about ourselves and our understanding of life itself. It covers all of that. And yoga really has tools for every single part of our body. The physical aspect, it looks at the postures and the breath. For the mind, there are ways of self-inquiry, there are ways of concentration, mindfulness, meditation. And, you know, emotionally, again, there are ways of self-inquiry, understanding ourselves emotionally. So to say it's an exercise program is just to make it much smaller than it is. There is one more point that I like to make in this video, which happens to become a bit longer than I had expected. The last point is that we cannot be bad at yoga. Often I see people comparing themselves to others, even those who have done it for a long time. I happen to do it myself. I look at somebody who has done yoga for much less time than myself, for you know, I don't know, a few months, and I see them do postures or strike a pose in a way that I cannot do. And I know that we all come to yoga with a past. We come to yoga with, you know, different genetics, different muscular, different bone structure. We come into it with a different mental conditioning. And what the aim is really is not to judge this conditioning, is not to judge the physical body, the mental and the emotional body, the nervous system per se, but to actually get to know it. And we cannot be bad at watching and looking and becoming aware. Everything else is details. Is not the branch. Is not the roots. Is not the real thing. Everything else that come around it, or somebody can do the split and I can't. Somebody is able to, you know, meditate for longer and I can't. Somebody looks like they're so peaceful and I'm not. All of these are really the chatters and the contractions of the ego. The point is awareness. The point is becoming conscious of what up until that point wasn't. So there's no way of being bad at it, in my opinion. I'm sure there would be more points that I will remember that I would like to share as the essentials of yoga. If I do, I'll make another video. Otherwise, I won't. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you later.